Mia stood frozen outside her beloved bakery, Sweet Dreams, as the once inviting glow from within now flickered menacingly through the windows. The smell of smoke filled the air, and the heat from the flames was intense even from a distance. She could hear the crackling of the fire, like the angry snapping of 1,000 twigs, as it consumed her life's work. Her heart pounded in her chest, echoing the desperate cries of her customers who had rushed out onto the street. "Mia, are you okay?" asked Mrs. Harper, the elderly woman who lived next door and was one of Mia's most loyal patrons. Mia nodded numbly, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The fire seemed to grow before their eyes, licking at the walls with greedy tongues of orange and red. It was as if a monster had awakened inside Sweet Dreams, devouring everything that made it special: the warmth, the laughter, the sweet aromas that promised comfort and joy. Mia felt her dreams crumbling like the burning timbers above. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the air, and part of the roof collapsed inward with a shower of sparks. A collective gasp went up from the crowd, and Mia felt a scream building inside her. This couldn't be happening. Not to Sweet Dreams. Not to her. Just then, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached. A fire truck rounded the corner, its lights flashing like angry eyes. The vehicle skidded to a halt in front of the bakery, and firefighters leaped out, their faces determined beneath their helmets. Among them was Jake Bennett, Pine Hollow's dedicated firefighter. He caught Mia's eye briefly before turning his attention to the blaze. She watched as he and his team sprang into action, pulling hoses, shouting orders, and battling the inferno that threatened to consume everything she held dear. Mia couldn't bear to watch any longer. She turned away from the flames, tears streaming down her cheeks, and wrapped her arms around herself tightly. Her bakery was gone, swallowed by the fire like a tasteless morsel. All those hours spent kneading dough, decorating cakes, and creating pastries with love, all of it reduced to ashes in just minutes. As she stood there, alone amidst the chaos, Mia felt something inside her snap. She fell to her knees on the cold pavement, her tears mingling with the dew from the early morning grass. She had lost everything she'd worked so hard for, and now she was left with nothing but empty hands and a broken heart. But even as despair threatened to consume her, Mia remembered something her grandmother used to say: "When life gives you lemons, make lemonade." It wasn't much, but it gave her a tiny spark of hope amidst the ashes. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a way forward from this disaster. She could only pray that the embers left behind might somehow be fanned into new flames, ones that would burn brighter and stronger than ever before. As she watched Jake and his team fight valiantly against the fire, Mia felt a glimmer of gratitude amidst her grief. At least they were trying to save something, even if it was too late for Sweet Dreams. Little did she know that among those firefighters was one who would soon become much more than just a hero in turnout gear. He would become her hope, her comfort, and ultimately, the love of her life. But for now, all Mia could do was watch, wait, and pray as the fire raged on. Jake moved with practiced efficiency, his eyes scanning the burning bakery as he approached. The heat was intense, but it barely registered through his protective gear. His focus was solely on the woman standing alone amidst the chaos, her face pale and streaked with tears. He knew Mia from around town, who didn't? Pine Hollow wasn't big enough for anyone to slip under the radar, especially someone as kind-hearted and talented as she was. But he'd never seen her like this, so vulnerable and broken. It made his heart ache in a way that had nothing to do with the fire they were fighting. "Mia," Jake called out gently, closing the distance between them. She looked up at him with wide, haunted eyes. "It's going to be okay," he promised, even though he knew better than most how bad things could get when fire was involved. But sometimes, all you had to offer someone was hope. She shook her head slightly, her lower lip trembling. "My bakery, it's gone." Jake nodded solemnly. "I know. And I'm so sorry." He took a deep breath before continuing, "But this isn't the end of your dream, Mia. It's just a setback." She looked at him like he was crazy. "How can you say that? Everything I've worked for, it's all burned to the ground." Because, Jake said firmly, taking a step closer to her, you're still here. You're strong, and you're talented, and you have an entire town behind you. Together, we'll figure this out. Mia searched his face, as if looking for any sign of insincerity. But all she found was sincerity and something else, something warm and comforting that made her feel just a little bit better about the mess they were in. Come on, Jake said softly, taking her hand in his gloved one. Let's get you somewhere safe while we work on putting out this fire. He led her away from the burning building, towards the waiting ambulance where paramedics stood ready to assess anyone who needed help. Mia hesitated at first, looking back over her shoulder at the flames that still danced wickedly within Sweet Dreams. It'll still be here when we're done, Jake assured her. But for now, you need to take care of yourself. Mia let him guide her towards the ambulance, feeling a strange mix of emotions churning inside her. Grief, certainly, but also gratitude, and something else she couldn't quite put her finger on. Whatever it was, it felt good, like sunlight warming her heart even amidst all this darkness. As they reached the ambulance, Jake turned to face her once more. His helmet cast his features into shadow, but Mia could still see the kindness in his eyes. We'll get through this together, he promised her. You're not alone, Mia. And with that promise, she felt a spark of hope ignite within her, small, perhaps, but no less real for all its fragility. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward from these ashes after all. Meanwhile, back at the fire, Jake's team worked tirelessly to extinguish the blaze. It took hours of hard labor, but eventually, they managed to tame the inferno that had threatened to consume everything Mia held dear. As the last embers died away, Jake stood amidst the charred remains of Sweet Dreams, his heart heavy with memories of the past and dreams for the future. For he knew, as surely as he knew his own name, that this was not the end for Mia. No, it was merely a beginning, a chance for her to rise from these ashes like a phoenix reborn, stronger and more beautiful than ever before. And though he couldn't yet see the path forward, Jake felt confident that together, they would forge one worthy of such an incredible woman. And so, as dawn broke over Pine Hollow, revealing a sky painted with hues of orange and pink, Jake Bennett made himself a silent vow, to be there for Mia every step of the way, offering her his strength when hers faltered, his hope when hers was lost, and his love whenever she needed it most. For even amidst all this destruction, one truth remained clear: he had fallen in love with her, and nothing short of an act of God would ever change that fact. But for now, Jake simply took Mia's hand once more, giving it a gentle squeeze as they stood side by side, facing whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. And together, they stepped forward into the light, ready to face whatever came their way, arm in arm, heart to heart, and hope burning bright within them both like an eternal flame. Mia stood amidst the charred remains of Sweet Dreams, her heart aching like it had been set on fire all over again. The once vibrant and inviting bakery was now nothing more than a smoldering shell, its walls blackened by smoke and its floors littered with debris. She couldn't believe this was where she'd spent countless hours pouring her heart and soul into creating delicious pastries and cakes for the people of Pine Hollow. As she surveyed the damage, Mia felt a lump form in her throat. All those memories, the laughter shared with customers over warm scones, the pride she took in perfecting her recipes, the joy of seeing someone's face light up when they bit into one of her creations, all of it seemed to have been reduced to ashes by the merciless flames. But even as tears threatened to spill down her cheeks, Mia felt a gentle squeeze on her hand. She turned to find Jake standing beside her, his eyes filled with understanding and compassion. "It's okay," he murmured softly. "We'll get through this together." She managed a small nod, grateful for his presence. Over the past few days, since the fire, Jake had been a constant source of support for Mia. He'd helped her navigate the overwhelming tasks that came with dealing with an insurance company and the local building department, offered words of encouragement when she felt like giving up, and even brought her meals from other restaurants in town to make sure she was eating properly. Now, as they stood together amongst the ruins of Sweet Dreams, Jake seemed determined to help Mia find a silver lining amidst all this destruction. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "this could be an opportunity for something new. Mia raised an eyebrow skeptically. How do you figure that? Well, Jake explained, gesturing around them, you don't have to rebuild Sweet Dreams exactly as it was before. You can make changes, improve upon what you had, create something even better. She hesitated, considering his words. It was true that she'd always wanted to expand her menu but never seemed to have the time or resources to do so. Perhaps this was the push she needed to finally make those dreams a reality. I never thought about it like that, Mia admitted softly. But what if people don't like the changes? What if they miss the old Sweet Dreams too much? Jake shook his head firmly. Then they'll just have to learn to love the new one even more. Because this is your chance, Mia, to create a space that truly reflects who you are as a baker and an entrepreneur. A place where you can experiment with new recipes, try out different ideas, a place that's uniquely yours. His enthusiasm was infectious, and Mia felt a spark of excitement ignite within her. She looked around at the empty lot where her bakery once stood, imagining all the possibilities that lay ahead. Okay, she said finally, determination in her voice. Let's do it. Let's rebuild Sweet Dreams, but better. Jake grinned at her, his eyes crinkling at the corners. That's the spirit. Now, let's start making some plans. We need to figure out what you want this new bakery to look like, both inside and out. They spent the next hour discussing ideas, brainstorming everything from layout and decor to menu additions and even potential partnerships with other local businesses. With each passing minute, Mia felt her spirits lifting, her grief beginning to transform into something more hopeful. As they walked back towards Jake's truck, where he'd parked it on the outskirts of the scorched lot, Mia slipped her hand into his. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything. He looked down at her, surprise etched onto his features. What do you mean? For being here for me, she explained. For helping me see that this isn't the end, that there's still so much more I can accomplish if I just keep moving forward. You've given me hope when all I wanted to do was curl up and give up. Jake's expression softened, and he squeezed her hand gently. That's what friends are for, Mia. And, well, I hope we can be more than just friends someday soon. She felt her heart flutter at his words, remembering the moment they'd shared by the lake during their picnic lunch. There was something undeniably special between them, a connection that went beyond simple friendship or gratitude. I think I'd like that, Mia replied softly, looking up into Jake's warm brown eyes. A lot. As they climbed into his truck and drove away from the ashes of Sweet Dreams, Mia couldn't help but feel grateful for the second chance life had given her, both in terms of rebuilding her business and finding someone who understood and supported her dreams as much as Jake did. And though there were still many challenges ahead, she knew that together, they could overcome anything. Because sometimes, all it takes is a little hope and a whole lot of determination to turn even the darkest ashes into something beautiful again. As the days turned into weeks, Mia found herself adjusting to her new temporary reality. With Sweet Dreams still a smoldering shell, she decided to continue serving Pine Hollow's sweet tooth by baking from home and selling her pastries through word of mouth and social media. The outpouring of support from the community was overwhelming. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers offered their help in setting up a makeshift online ordering system, delivering ingredients to Mia's doorstep, and spreading the news about her pop-up bakery operation. Mia woke up early each morning, her kitchen transformed into a bustling workspace filled with the aroma of freshly baked goods. She experimented with new recipes inspired by Jake's encouragement, adding creative twists to her classic offerings while also introducing some entirely new items. On one such morning, as she was packaging an order for Mrs. Henderson down the street, there was a knock at her front door. Standing on the other side was Jake, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee and a brown paper bag that smelled deliciously like freshly baked bread. Good morning, he said with a warm smile, handing Mia one of the coffees. I thought you could use some breakfast before you dive back into your baking marathon. Thank you, she replied gratefully, taking a sip of the coffee and feeling its comforting warmth spread through her body. That's really thoughtful of you. They sat down at Mia's kitchen table, where they shared stories about their respective mornings while enjoying their breakfast. Jake regaled her with tales from his recent fishing trip with some friends, while Mia told him about a particularly challenging batch of croissants she'd managed to salvage just in time for an order. As they finished up their meal, Jake pulled out a small envelope from his pocket and slid it across the table towards Mia. "Here," he said simply. She raised an eyebrow curiously but took the envelope nonetheless. Inside, she found a beautifully handwritten note on elegant stationery. "Dearest Mia. We hope this letter finds you in good health and high spirits. We have been so impressed by your resilience and determination in the face of such adversity. It is clear that Pine Hollow simply would not be the same without your delicious creations, Therefore, we would like to invite you to participate in our annual Harvest Festival as a featured vendor. This year's event will be held on October 15th at the town square, and we believe that your presence would greatly enrich the festivities, Please let us know if you are available to join us by replying to this letter or contacting our office directly at 555-123-4567. We eagerly await your response, Sincerely yours, the Pine Hollow Harvest Festival Committee." Mia looked up from the letter, her eyes wide with surprise and excitement. "Jake, this is amazing. I've always wanted to be a part of the Harvest Festival, but I never thought they'd consider me for something like this." He grinned at her enthusiasm. "I knew you'd be perfect for it. And think about how much fun it'll be, all those people, tasting your incredible treats while enjoying the festival's other attractions." Mia nodded eagerly, already envisioning the scene. "I can't wait. I'll have to come up with some special creations just for the event." "Well," Jake said, standing up and gathering their empty coffee cups, "you've got plenty of time to plan. But for now, I should let you get back to work. Those pastries aren't going to bake themselves." She walked him to the door, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over her once again. Not only had Jake brought her breakfast and delivered such wonderful news, but he'd also become an invaluable source of support during this challenging time. As she closed the door behind him, Mia couldn't help but feel like things were finally starting to look up. With construction on the new Sweet Dreams Bakery set to begin soon, the upcoming Harvest Festival, and Jake by her side every step of the way, she knew that better days lay ahead. And so, with renewed energy and determination, Mia turned back towards her kitchen, ready to tackle another day of baking one delicious surprise at a time. Chapter 12, Tools and Timers The first light of dawn broke over Pine Hollow, casting golden hues upon the charred remains of Sweet Dreams Bakery. It had been 3 months since the fire, but today marked a new beginning. Construction on the rebuilt bakery was finally set to commence. Mia stood at the edge of what would soon be her new kitchen, Jake by her side. They watched as the crew from Timber's construction unloaded tools and materials, ready to transform the empty lot into Mia's dream bakery once again. "Ready to get started?" Jake asked, giving Mia's hand a supportive squeeze. She nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude for his unwavering presence throughout this journey. "Let's do it." Together, they walked onto the site, greeting the crew members and thanking them for their hard work. The foreman, a burly man named Hank with a warm smile and kind eyes, handed Mia and Jake hard hats adorned with the words "Future Bakery Owners" written in bold letters. As the crew began setting up sawhorses and unrolling blueprints, Mia couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at how far they'd come since that fateful night. The outpouring of support from the community had been overwhelming, and now, with Jake's help, she was rebuilding not just her business but also her life. Jake handed Mia a hammer, its weight solid and reassuring in her hand. "I think it's time to break ground," he said, holding up a small silver shovel for himself. They walked together to the center of the lot, where a white ribbon stretched across the dirt, marking the spot where they would begin laying the foundation. With Mia wielding the hammer and Jake holding the shovel, they cut through the ribbon amidst cheers from the crew. As they dug into the earth, Mia felt a sense of catharsis wash over her. Each scoop of dirt removed was like letting go of another piece of the pain and uncertainty that had plagued her since the fire. Beside her, Jake worked tirelessly, his muscles flexing beneath his shirt as he helped clear the way for their new beginning. Once they'd created a small pit in the ground, Hank stepped forward with a time capsule box. "Tradition has it that we bury something to mark this moment," he explained, handing the box to Mia. She looked at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. Together, they brainstormed what to include: a photograph of the old bakery, a handwritten note about their plans for the new one, and even a small bag of ashes from the original Sweet Dreams, symbols of rebirth and resilience. As Mia placed the time capsule into the hole, she felt tears well up in her eyes. Jake wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close as they watched Hank fill the pit with dirt once more. With the groundbreaking ceremony complete, the crew set to work constructing the foundation. Mia and Jake spent the day observing their progress, offering input when needed, and even helping out where they could. As they worked side by side, Mia marveled at how natural it felt being with Jake like this, partners in every sense of the word. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the construction site, Hank called it a day for his crew. He shook hands with Mia and Jake, promising to keep them updated on the progress as they moved forward with the project. Exhausted but exhilarated, Mia turned to Jake. "Would you like to come over for dinner tonight?" she asked softly. "I could whip up something simple. We deserve a celebration after today." He smiled warmly at her invitation. "I'd love that," he replied. "But only if I can help cook. You've been on your feet all day, let me take care of you tonight." They walked back to Mia's house hand in hand, leaving the sounds of hammers and saws behind them. As they prepared a simple meal together, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, they talked about their hopes for the new bakery, laughing and dreaming about the future. Over dinner, Jake shared stories from his own past, revealing glimpses into the man he'd once been before moving to Pine Hollow. Mia listened intently, learning more about him with each passing moment. In turn, she opened up about her own history, discussing her family's legacy in baking and how Sweet Dreams had always been her dream. As they finished their meal, Jake reached across the table and took Mia's hand in his own. "You know," he said softly, "I've never felt more at home than I do here with you." Mia felt her heart swell at his words, knowing that she too had found something special in their connection. She squeezed his hand gently, unable to find the right words to express how much his presence meant to her. Instead, she simply said, "Thank you for being here, Jake. For everything." And as they shared a tender kiss beneath the soft glow of the kitchen lights, Mia knew that together, they could overcome any challenge that came their way. With each passing day, their love story grew stronger, intertwined with the very foundation of Sweet Dreams Bakery itself. For now, though, they would simply enjoy this moment, a celebration not just of new beginnings but also of the bond they'd forged along the way. And as long as they had each other, Mia knew that anything was possible. The sun streamed through the windows of Mia's kitchen as she and Jake stood side by side, aprons tied around their waists, flour dusting their hands like battle scars from a war waged against dough. Today was the day they'd decided to experiment with a new recipe for sourdough bread, something hearty and rustic that would complement the cozy atmosphere of Sweet Dreams Bakery perfectly. Mia measured out the ingredients while Jake mixed them together, his strong hands working the dough with surprising gentleness. As they fell into an easy rhythm, Mia couldn't help but steal glances at him, admiring not just his skill but also the way his brow furrowed in concentration or how his lips curved slightly when he caught her looking. "Have you ever made sourdough before?" she asked, watching as he folded the dough over itself with practiced ease. He shook his head. "No, but I've always wanted to learn. There's something therapeutic about working with dough like this." He paused, then added with a smile, "Besides, I figure if anyone can teach me, it's you." Mia felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. She knew he wasn't just talking about baking. There was an unspoken understanding between them now, a connection that went beyond shared recipes and late-night conversations. As they continued to work the dough, Mia found herself growing more comfortable with Jake by her side. They laughed together over spilled flour and burnt fingertips, their laughter echoing through the kitchen like music. With each passing moment, she felt their bond deepening, becoming something tangible and real. Once the dough had risen sufficiently, they shaped it into loaves and slid them into the oven. As Mia set the timer, Jake poured them each a glass of wine, and they settled onto stools at the counter to wait. "So," he began, swirling his wine thoughtfully, "have you given any more thought to what we talked about earlier? About expanding your menu once the bakery reopens?" Mia nodded, taking a sip of her wine. "I have, actually. I was thinking maybe we could add some savory options, quiches, tarts, that sort of thing. What do you think?" Jake's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "That sounds amazing," he said eagerly. "We could even do themed menus based on different regions or cultures. Like a French-inspired week with croissants and almond tarts, then switch it up for an Italian theme with focaccia and tiramisu." Mia grinned at his enthusiasm. "I love that idea. We could make it a monthly thing, keep things fresh and exciting for our customers." As they continued to brainstorm ideas, the timer went off, signaling that their sourdough bread was ready. Mia fetched oven mitts while Jake retrieved the loaves from the oven, setting them down on the counter to cool. The aroma filled the kitchen, rich and comforting, making Mia's mouth water in anticipation. But before they could dive in, Jake had other plans. He stepped closer to her, his eyes never leaving hers as he reached out and gently wiped a smudge of flour from her cheek with his thumb. "You know," he said softly, "there's something else I've been wanting to try today." Mia's heart fluttered nervously in her chest as she realized what was happening. She felt her breath catch in her throat as Jake leaned in closer, his hand cupping her chin gently. "May I?" he asked, giving her one last chance to pull away if she wanted to. But Mia found herself nodding silently, unable to speak past the lump forming in her throat. As their lips met, it was like they were both tasting something new and wonderful for the very first time, sweet and warm, with just a hint of yeasty tang from the bread behind them. Jake's kiss was soft yet firm, confident but not overwhelming, leaving Mia feeling breathless and lightheaded when he finally pulled away. They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, breaths mingling in the space between them. Then, Jake reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind Mia's ear, his fingertips lingering on her cheekbone. "I've been wanting to do that since the first time we baked together," he admitted with a shy smile. Mia laughed softly, feeling her cheeks flush pink. "You mean you weren't just here for my culinary expertise?" He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close against him. "Well, maybe not entirely," he teased. "But don't worry, I still think your baking is pretty amazing too." As they shared another kiss, this one deeper and more passionate than the last, Mia knew without a doubt that she was falling in love with Jake. And as long as they had each other, their recipes would always be filled with love and magic. When they finally broke apart, panting and grinning like fools, they turned their attention back to the sourdough bread cooling on the counter. Together, they cut into the still warm loaf, steam billowing out as they revealed the soft, golden interior within. As Mia took her first bite, she closed her eyes and let the flavors wash over her, the tangy sourness of the dough, the slight chewiness that spoke of hours spent kneading and rising. But most importantly, there was something else entirely, the sweetness of new love, the warmth of shared dreams, and the promise of many more moments like this to come. And so, with flour dusting their aprons and laughter filling the air, Mia and Jake continued to bake together not just bread, but also a future filled with happiness, passion, and endless possibilities. As the sun began to rise on the day of the grand opening, Mia found herself feeling equal parts excited and nervous. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, baking endless batches of pastries, decorating the bakery with care, and even hiring a small staff to help keep things running smoothly. Now that the big day was finally here, she couldn't shake the butterflies fluttering around in her stomach. Jake must have sensed her nervousness as he gave her hand a reassuring squeeze while they stood side by side behind the counter. "It's going to be amazing," he whispered encouragingly. "Just remember to breathe." Mia took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was about to come. As the clock struck 9, she flipped the open sign over on the door and welcomed their first customers with a smile. The morning started off smoothly enough. Customers oohed and ahed over the beautifully displayed pastries, many of them familiar faces from around town who had heard about Mia's bakery through word of mouth. Jake worked seamlessly alongside her, taking orders, making change, and even handling a few eager children who wanted to know if there were any free samples available, to which he replied with a wink, "Not yet, but maybe later." As the hours ticked by, business remained steady but manageable. Mia felt herself relaxing into the familiar rhythm of serving customers, her confidence growing with each transaction completed successfully. But just as they approached the lunch hour rush, disaster struck. One of their new employees, a young woman named Lily who had been tasked with restocking the display cases, suddenly let out a shriek. In her haste to fill an empty shelf, she had accidentally knocked over a tray of croissants, sending them sliding across the counter like tiny, buttery dominoes. Customers gasped and turned to watch as the carefully arranged pastries tumbled onto the floor, their flaky layers scattering like confetti. Mia felt her heart sink. Not only were those lost sales, but now she'd have to spend time cleaning up the mess instead of serving customers. Before she could say anything, however, Jake was already in motion. He rushed around the counter and scooped up the fallen croissants, gathering them into his arms like a strange, edible bouquet. "Don't worry about it," he called out reassuringly to Lily, who looked mortified at her mistake. "These are still perfectly good, we'll just have to use them in a different way." With that, he turned to the waiting crowd and held up his makeshift pastry bundle. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced with a grin, "today is your lucky day. Because of an unfortunate accident, we've got some fresh out of the oven croissants here that didn't quite make it onto the counter. But instead of letting them go to waste, I'm going to turn them into something even more delicious, French toast." There were murmurs of approval from the crowd as Jake explained how he planned to dip the croissants in egg batter, cook them until golden brown, and serve them alongside fresh fruit compote and whipped cream. By the time he finished speaking, there was already a line forming at the counter, customers eager to try this impromptu special. Mia watched in amazement as Jake sprang into action, whipping up batter, slicing fruit, and cooking the croissant French toast with practiced ease. He moved effortlessly around the kitchen, his confidence never wavering despite the unexpected challenge thrown at him. As she served customers their regular orders, lattes, scones, sandwiches, Mia couldn't help but feel grateful for Jake's quick thinking and calm demeanor under pressure. Thanks to him, what could have been a disastrous moment had instead become an opportunity to create something new and exciting for their patrons. And as if that weren't enough, when the first plate of French toast was delivered to its eager recipient, Mia heard gasps of delight from nearby tables. The customer took a bite, closed her eyes in bliss, and declared it the best thing I've ever tasted. Word spread quickly among the customers, many of whom ordered the special themselves once they saw how popular it had become. Before long, every last crumb of fallen croissant had been transformed into something wonderful, all thanks to Jake's ingenuity. As the lunch rush began to taper off and they found themselves with a momentary lull in business, Mia pulled Jake aside. "Thank you," she said softly, looking up at him with tears shining in her eyes. "You saved the day back there. I don't know what I would have done without you." Jake smiled gently and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Hey, that's what partners are for," he replied warmly. "Besides, it was nothing compared to everything you've done for me since we started baking together. You've taught me so much, Mia, not just about pastries, but about confidence, creativity, and believing in myself." She leaned into his touch, feeling her heart swell with love and gratitude. In that moment, she knew without a doubt that they were meant to be together both professionally and personally. As the rest of the day unfolded smoothly, Mia couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over her. The grand opening had been a resounding success, thanks in large part to Jake's quick thinking and adaptability. And as she looked around at their happy customers, their dedicated staff, and especially at Jake himself, She knew that this was only the beginning of many wonderful things to come for their little bakery on the corner. As the last customer filtered out of the bakery, Mia let out a sigh of relief and leaned against the counter. The grand opening had been an overwhelming success, but now that it was over, she felt exhausted yet exhilarated. Jake walked over to her, wiping his hands on his apron. "Well, we did it," he said, grinning from ear to ear. "We actually pulled off a grand opening without any major catastrophes." Mia laughed softly and nodded in agreement. "Thanks to you," she replied gratefully. "If you hadn't turned that croissant disaster into something amazing, who knows how the day would have ended up." He shrugged modestly but didn't argue with her assessment. Instead, he reached out and took one of her hands in his own, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Mia," he began hesitantly, looking deep into her eyes, "I think we need to talk about something." Her heart fluttered nervously at the serious tone in his voice. Was this where he told her that working together had been too much, that they needed to take a step back from their partnership? Or worse, that he didn't want to pursue anything more than friendship? But then Jake took a deep breath and continued, "I know we've both been trying really hard to focus on making the bakery a success, but I can't ignore my feelings for you any longer. I care about you deeply, Mia, not just as a business partner, but as someone who makes me happier than anyone else ever has." She felt her breath catch in her throat as she listened to him pour out his heart. All this time, they'd been dancing around their growing attraction, too afraid to admit it aloud for fear of ruining the delicate balance they'd established between them. But now, hearing Jake speak so openly about his feelings, Mia knew that there was no turning back. She owed it to herself and to him to be honest about what she wanted as well. "Jake," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her own heart, "I feel the same way. These past few weeks working together have been some of the happiest days of my life. You make me laugh, you challenge me, and most importantly, you believe in me even when I don't believe in myself." He smiled softly at her words, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "So, what do we do now?" he asked tentatively. Mia took a deep breath and made her decision. She stepped closer to him, closing the distance between their bodies until they were standing mere inches apart. "We take a chance," she said softly, looking up into his eyes. "We follow our hearts and see where this takes us." Jake's face broke into a wide smile as he cupped her cheek gently in his hand. "I like that idea," he murmured before leaning down to press his lips softly against hers. The kiss was tender and tentative at first, but it quickly deepened into something more passionate as they lost themselves in the moment. Mia melted against him, wrapping her arms around his neck as Jake pulled her closer, his hands sliding down to rest on her hips. When they finally broke apart, they were both grinning like fools, their cheeks flushed with happiness and desire. "I've been wanting to do that for ages," Jake confessed, resting his forehead against hers. "Me too," Mia admitted shyly. "But now that we've started, I don't want it to end." He chuckled softly and kissed her again, this time with even more enthusiasm than before. As they lost themselves in each other's arms amidst the sweet chaos of their bakery, Mia knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them head-on as long as Jake was by her side. And so, with the grand opening behind them and a newfound love blossoming between them, Mia and Jake stepped forward into the future together, hand in hand and hearts intertwined. Mia stood behind the counter of their bustling bakery, a stack of order forms tucked under one arm as she greeted customers with a warm smile. It had been 3 months since their grand opening, and business was booming. Their little bakery on the corner had become something of a town landmark, drawing in patrons from all over with its delicious pastries and inviting atmosphere. As she rang up another sale, Mia heard the bell above the door jingle announce the arrival of someone new. She glanced up to see Mayor Thompson entering the bakery, her sharp eyes scanning the room before settling on Mia. "Good morning, Mayor," Mia greeted warmly, walking over to shake her hand. "What can I get for you today?" The mayor smiled at her but declined any treats. Instead, she got straight to the point. "Mia, I've heard wonderful things about your baking skills and your attention to detail. That's why I'm here. I have a special request. Intrigued, Mia leaned against the counter and gave the mayor her full attention. I'll be hosting my daughter's wedding reception next month, Mayor Thompson explained, and I'd like to commission you to create the wedding cake for the occasion. Mia felt her heart skip a beat at the unexpected offer. A wedding cake was no small task. It required precision, creativity, and an immense amount of pressure to get it just right. But she couldn't deny that the challenge also excited her. I'd be honored, Mia replied after only a moment's hesitation. Thank you for thinking of me. The mayor clapped her hands together in delight. Excellent. I knew you were the perfect choice. She pulled out a business card and handed it to Mia. Here are my contact details. Let's set up a meeting soon to discuss the specifics. Mia nodded, tucking the card into her apron pocket. As she watched Mayor Thompson leave the bakery, she felt a mix of nerves and excitement churning in her stomach. Everything all right? Jake asked, approaching her from behind the counter. He must have noticed her distracted expression. She turned to face him, holding up the mayor's business card. The mayor just commissioned me to make the wedding cake for her daughter's wedding next month. Jake's eyebrows shot up in surprise before breaking into a wide grin. That's amazing, Mia. You've got this, he said confidently. She appreciated his faith in her abilities, but still felt anxious about taking on such an important task. Thanks, Jake, she replied softly. I just hope I can do it justice. He reached out and squeezed her hand reassuringly. You're one of the most talented people I know. If anyone can create a stunning wedding cake, it's you. His words boosted her confidence slightly, and she gave him a grateful smile. Thanks for believing in me, she said softly. Over the next few weeks, Mia threw herself into planning the perfect wedding cake. She met with Mayor Thompson several times to discuss design ideas, flavor options, and any other details they could think of. Meanwhile, Jake helped her experiment with different recipes and techniques to ensure that the cake would not only look beautiful but taste delicious as well. As the big day approached, Mia found herself working tirelessly to bring her vision for the cake to life. She spent hours crafting intricate sugar flowers, perfecting her buttercream frosting technique, and baking countless layers of sponge cake until she had achieved just the right balance between fluffiness and moisture. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of preparation, the day of Mayor Thompson's daughter's wedding arrived. Mia loaded up her van with carefully packaged cake components, each one meticulously labeled and secured to prevent any mishaps during transport. Upon arriving at the venue, she set to work assembling the towering confection in a quiet corner of the banquet hall. As she placed each layer carefully into position, adding delicate piped borders and arranging her handmade sugar flowers with painstaking precision, Mia felt a sense of pride wash over her. This was it. All those late nights spent slaving away over hot stoves and meticulous frosting work had led to this moment. She stepped back to admire her creation, feeling a mix of satisfaction and relief that she'd managed to pull off such an ambitious project. Just as she finished placing the final flower atop the cake, Mayor Thompson approached her, clapping her hands together in delight. Mia, it's absolutely gorgeous, she exclaimed, circling the cake to examine every angle. My daughter is going to be thrilled. Mia blushed at the compliment but thanked the mayor nonetheless. As they chatted briefly about last-minute details, Mia couldn't help but feel grateful for this opportunity to showcase her skills and prove herself as a serious baker. As guests began filtering into the banquet hall, Mia stood back and watched as Mayor Thompson's daughter cut into the cake with her new husband by her side. The crowd oohed and awed over the perfect slices served up on elegant china plates, and Mia couldn't help but swell with pride knowing that she had played such a significant role in making this special day even more memorable. Later that evening, as they packed up their van to head home, Jake pulled Mia aside for a moment. You did it, he said softly, his eyes shining with admiration. That cake was perfect. She leaned into him, wrapping her arms around his waist. I couldn't have done it without you, she replied honestly. He smiled down at her, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead before they climbed back into the van together. As they drove away from the venue, Mia knew that this was just the beginning of many more incredible challenges and accomplishments they would face side by side as partners in business and in life. And as she looked over at Jake's smiling face illuminated by passing streetlights, she felt grateful beyond measure for everything they had built together. Their little bakery on the corner had become so much more than just a place to sell delicious treats. It was now a symbol of their love, their passion, and their shared dreams for the future. As Mia and Jake drove away from the wedding venue, the weight of accomplishment hung heavy but satisfyingly in the air. They'd pulled off an incredible feat with the mayor's daughter's wedding cake, and Mia couldn't help feeling grateful for Jake's unwavering support throughout the process. Pulling into their driveway, they unloaded the van together, laughing and stealing kisses between trips back and forth from the vehicle to their apartment above the bakery. Once everything was put away, they collapsed onto the couch, exhausted but content. "You know," Jake began, turning to face Mia with a soft expression, "I've never seen you more in your element than when you're creating something like that cake." She smiled back at him, her heart swelling with warmth. "Thank you for being there every step of the way, Jake. I couldn't have done it without you." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "That's what we do, right? We support each other, no matter what." His gaze held hers captive, and she felt herself falling deeper in love with him. Mia leaned into his touch, placing her hand over his. "You mean everything to me, Jake. This bakery, our life together, it wouldn't be the same without you." He smiled, but there was something more behind his eyes, a hint of nervousness, perhaps? Before she could ask what was on his mind, he spoke again. "Mia, I've been thinking." He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I know we've only known each other for a little over a year now, but it feels like so much longer. Like we were meant to find each other." Her heart fluttered in her chest as she listened intently. "I love you," he said softly, his thumb brushing gently across her cheekbone. "And I want to build a future with you, not just here at the bakery, but together, as partners in every sense of the word." Tears welled up in Mia's eyes, overwhelmed by Jake's heartfelt words. She took his hand in hers, squeezing it tightly. "I love you too," she whispered back, her voice thick with emotion. "And I want that future more than anything." Jake grinned broadly, pulling her into a tight embrace. As they kissed, Mia felt like the luckiest woman alive. Not only had she found someone who believed in her dreams and supported her unconditionally, but also someone who wanted to build a life with her. In that moment, surrounded by each other's love, they knew that their future was bright, filled with endless possibilities, and sweetened by the icing on the cake of their own happily ever after.